Hello and welcome to the Robcast.
Whoa, that's my line. Welcome to the Robcast. This is a show about Oakville, the people that live, work, and do business here. Today, my guest is the mayor of Oakville, Mr. Rob Burton, and you're not going to want to miss this.
It's the Robcast Podcast. He's with you for the next hour or 20 minutes. Who knows? Let's see how it goes.
The Robcast is brought to you by Oakville's own Fisher Private Wealth Management of RBC Dominion Securities and Angus Fraser Private Banker with RBC Private Banking Oakville.
Here he is. It's Rob Raham.
Mayor Burton, thank you so much for being here today.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
So, as long as I can remember, I believe it's almost 18 years now as mayor, it's really the only way that we see you. What was life like before you kind of got into politics?
Well, I think the shortest way to tell the story is I worked in film and television my whole life. At the urging of a 4-year-old daughter, created the YTV television network.
Is that right?
And I sold it and retired to Oakville when I was 48 to laugh and sing and play. And I got involved in all the kids. I have 3 kids, and so we got involved in every kind of activity that you do with your kids. If you incline to the programmed kid model of parenting, which my wife and I do. And after the events for the kids, the sports moms and dads, the arts, the music, whoever, we would get around, maybe have a beer, and we would say, why don't we have this or why don't we have that? We'd go out of town and we'd see other people had better stuff. And we would go, this is Oakville, why don't we have that?
Right.
So one day I foolishly said, well, maybe we should all run for council and send them the message that they've fallen behind in keeping up with growth. People now don't remember what really rapid growth we had throughout the 90s. And so...
River Oaks, Glen Abbey.
Yeah.
And upper middle, right?
And we won. And so we built stuff.
Yeah.
We had 800,000 square feet of community facilities at the time, and we're up to 2.1 million now. So we built a little bit of stuff. We built a lot of ice.
Yeah.
We built a lot of playing fields. We built a lot of community centers. We had 3, now we have 7. Well, the 7th is about to open. So
they got one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, was there something that you kind of said over a beer, I'm kind of laughing about, like, were there some issues that you saw that you thought you could make a difference? What was the main driver for you to kind of run for mayor?
I knew that we needed more playing fields and community facilities. I built a television network. I figured I could build stuff.
Interesting. So tell me about that first process, because you originally ran in 2003. That was your first kick at the can, and then went for it again in 2006. What do you think kind of won over the people of Oakville? Were they ready for a change, or was there a platform that you kind of represented that you thought people kind of got behind you on?
Well, in 2003, when we came very close, it was like 12 votes. And then they recounted, and it changed every time they recounted.
Yeah.
And there's something in you and me and everybody, when it's never the same number twice, you get a little concerned.
Right.
Well, that happened. But we had run just trying to send a message. And the media response, the media covered a response from the incumbents. What message? We got reelected. And so everybody who was behind me demanded that we run again.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to. I figured surely they'll listen and surely they'd build the stuff.
Yeah.
In 2010, in my reelection, the previous incumbent came out with the line, Burton built too much ice. And I think I got 70% of the vote then. Wrong thing.
A lot of hockey parents.
Wrong thing to say.
So, looking back, at your term right now, is there something that you're most kind of proud of? Was there one claim that you would look back now and say, man, I helped to kind of make that happen? When you're looking at Oakville as a whole.
Well, take a look at 16 Mile Sports Complex at the Quad Arena with the international ice, the heated seats, heated by waste heat from the compressors. It's a LEED gold building.
Yeah.
Why not be proud of that?
Yeah.
And then, we had this heritage arena, Oakville Arena, first arena ever built in this town. That's a classic case where the kids come home from the war and population 5,000 in Oakville then. They say to their parents, "This town needs an arena."
Yeah.
And the parents go, "Well, we're too small. We can't have an arena. You just don't have the right expectations." And the boys, I knew some of them. One of them went on to become mayor of Oakville between 73 and in the 70s and the early 80s for about 13 years, 6 terms. And he said that they said back to their parents, "Don't tell us what we can't do. We just won a world war."
Yeah.
And they built it. And it wasn't really terrific. The ice was uneven. It wasn't a regulation size. If you ever had the pleasure at the time of playing there, you saw the dressing rooms were like catacombs of Rome, pit run cement walls.
This unbelievable roof structure. Like that was one of the heritage aspects to it, right?
Yeah, that was the beauty piece. The rest, not so much.
Yeah.
So that's the piece we kept.
Yeah. I think that was in my first year. I think I was 5 years old. That's where we played, as Oakville Arena, the dreaded 6 a.m. games. And that was, I remember my dad tying my skates in those tiny dressing rooms. It was tough.
Well, you don't look that old, so you probably played at Kinnock, too.
Yes.
And Kinnock, we always...
fences.
Our coldest arena.
Yeah. I actually blew my shoulder out on the back boards because it's concrete behind it. That's why they don't have contact in that arena.
And I'll tell you one other thing. I'm not done. There's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done. One of the things that I wanted to do was our cultural facilities downtown are way out of date. They date back to the 67, 77 period. They're way too small for the city the city that we've become.
Yeah.
And yes, I know we call ourselves a town.
I was going to say.
But that mayor I talked about, Harry Barrett, who was mayor for 6 terms back in the 70s, 80s, he taught everybody to say, Oakville is a city that calls itself a town and acts like a village. And we were 70,000 people when he said that.
Right.
So we're 3 times that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the new community cultural facilities, a new performing arts center, a new central library, a place downtown for the galleries, those are important things to keep the downtown alive and cooking. And I was very proud of having accumulated enough money without breaking your back on taxes to do that about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
When the province decided that our overdue need for a modern hospital was going to be given to us. Our wish was going to be granted, and the hospital made a very good case, and the public made a very good case that we would take that money and give it to the hospital to make the hospital happen.
Yeah. And
so I said, no problem. We will fall back and we will make more money without raising taxes. And it's just going to be delayed a little while. And now we've done that, and we've done that by creating business enterprises that the town owns that operate energy service. So we took our hydro utility and set it up to create energy services and energy-related construction companies that we create or buy all over the North America, and we make profit from that. And we literally going to build the new cultural facilities with other people's money.
Wow, interesting. So, let's get into this one. You're speaking of the development, you're speaking of the growth, and I think, most people would sit back and say that you've done it tastefully with Oakville's in the best mind of what Oakville needs. Obviously, some of the newer proposals that have come out, including Midtown, have become pretty hot button, issues. Where do you kind of stand? Like where does that kind of come down from? I know we have a demand to build housing. We have lots of land north of us, but where does that kind of the idea of Midtown, where did that originally come from?
The province of Ontario.
Okay.
The province of Ontario in 2005, 2006 passed a law called the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and they decreed that that there were going to be 26 urban growth centers around 26 GO stations.
Okay.
And the biggest number of passengers in the system outside of Union Station is Oakville.
Right.
We're number one,
Yeah.
if you will. So it follows that we had to create a plan to accommodate that order from the province.
Yeah.
And in 2007 to 2009, we created the Livable Oakville official plan. And here's the essence of it. Before that, we were always fighting infill development that was inappropriate to our neighborhoods. And it got us all upset for the I guess I'd been here 20 years by then, give or take, or 15. Anyway, the whole time that I'd been here, starting in the early 90s till then, all that happened was fights over inappropriate development in our neighborhoods.
Right.
And
You mean the big boxes that are coming up in.
Apartment buildings where you didn't want an apartment building on your street, mega houses, whatever.
Yeah.
And we'd always lose at the Ontario Municipal Board. And I thought that the problem was that the official plan of the town of Oakville had so many loopholes, so many contradictions, that it could mean anything to anybody. And one of the things I promised to do if I got elected was to rewrite that puppy from the ground up. And I won. And so we did. It took 2 years. We had every residents association in town involved in it. We had everybody who cared about it welcome to sit at the table. And this is what we came up with in one sentence. We're going to direct all the growth and intensification and density that's coming our way, courtesy of the province, to strategic growth areas built around high transit capacity.
Right.
In order to conserve the character of the stable, established streets where we live. And that has recently been recognized by the province, that principle of conserving the character of the stable, established neighborhood streets where you live.
Yep.
That's been recognized by the province in their new provincial planning policy that comes into effect October 20th.
Right.
So they strengthened our ability to protect our neighborhoods and reinforced the requirement to send it to these high transit nodes like a GO station.
Right.
And as you know, we got 2 GO stations.
Right.
So so that's your basic version of what's happening. Now, one of the things you have to understand is that Oakville's always grown. Oakville's doubled its population 30 times since it was founded.
Right.
It's going to double again.
Yep.
The rate we grow right now is around 3%. If you call it 2%, the doubling rate at 2% is half a 70. It's 35 years. So in 35 years from now, you can expect that we'll be double what we are now.
Yeah.
I don't want to alarm people or anything, but 200 years ago, Manhattan had the population that we have today.
200 years.
200 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
We're about 230,000, and in the 200 years ago, Manhattan's population was 235,000. I don't think anything was taller than 4 stories.
Yeah.
It's 22 square miles. We're 55 square miles.
It's interesting you bring up Manhattan. Sorry to interrupt. It's because, part of the challenge that I think a lot of the residents in those southern area or in the areas around Midtown are looking at, because some of the proposals of 50 story, it looked like Manhattan.
Yes, it does.
So how do we go from 230, not 200 years ago, to now jumping right into a megacity almost? It what's already everyone keeps saying it's the busiest train station or second busiest.
Well, it's the busiest. It's the busiest outside of Union.
Right.
And Union's where everybody goes to. So let's call us the number 1 station.
Right.
And that fits our Oakville theory of ourselves anyway. We're number 1.
Okay.
So the development around Midtown will take 30, 50 years. And it's not the only place that's going to grow.
Right.
We're going to, has anybody noticed that since 2006, we've been, when did the first homes go in? Around 2008. Has anybody noticed that the population it used to be empty north of Dundas.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of homes up there now.
Significant amount of homes. It's just building a building, right?
That's right. And there's a lot of people yet to come there. There's growth corridors on Trafalgar above the QEW, all the way up to the 407. There's a growth corridor on Dundas. There's a growth node at the 407 in Brony. There's a growth node at Trafalgar and the 407.
Right. So sorry, when you mean growth node, is that just that's been isolated for potential?
Another high density, high tower place like people are talking about at Midtown.
Okay.
And they'll take a long time to happen.
Yeah.
Nobody you're in the real estate business. Do you think that the market in Oakville could absorb more than a few thousand new homes a year?
Certainly not, no.
And that's about what we do.
Yeah.
And in Ontario, you're required to keep growing. And if you're in the business of selling homes, you're in a good business because there's always going to be some to sell.
Yeah. Let me ask you, you have, I think some of the platforms you've run on and a lot of your success is how you've kind of dug your heels in on certain issues. Glen Abbey Golf Course, the natural gas generation plant that was proposed.
I've stopped a few gas plants.
Yeah, you've stopped a few gas plants. Just recently, the housing accelerator fund that came down. You went down the road with it. You did the models, and you kind of said, "We're not going to do that." You're the only town in all of Ontario, the first one to say, "We're not going to do that." And so it's like I'm just trying to understand. Like you hold your way on certain growth elements, but then are your hands just tied by the province on other issues? Like do you want to see Oakville with these large buildings? Is that how you vision it?
I want to protect and preserve the official plan that we unanimously adopted and that every RA in town endorsed, which is designed to conserve the character of the stable residential streets where we live in our neighborhoods. And the only way you can do that in an environment where you're forced to grow is to send the growth somewhere. And so we send it to the high density nodes that we created back then and we've added to since. And then when the applications started showing up, some people decided that this was a shock and a surprise. But it's in the plan.
Yeah.
And not only that, in Ontario, your official plan governs. Our official plan says that's what should happen. Like, there's no hope of winning an appeal against it.
Right.
Like, we can refuse it. We've already, by not, there's a time limit on how fast you have to make a decision on these applications. That happened a long time ago in these applications by district. They're already under appeal.
Right.
They're at the Ontario Municipal Board now has a new name, the Ontario Land Tribunal. But my joke is they change the name of the Ontario Municipal Board every few years to protect it's like a witness protection program.
Yeah, people work there.
But so they're going to win because our OP says that's where it goes. And we spent the last year and a half refusing to amend our OP to try to control how much goes there.
Yeah.
Because right now what our OP says is sky's the limit. There's no limit in there.
That's right.
And since we haven't been able to agree on a limit, and we have to have a limit that can be defended by professionals, when you're going to wind up in front of the land tribunal. You're going to need qualified professional witnesses.
Yeah.
The tribunal doesn't, it weighs the case on the basis of the evidence and the opinion evidence of qualified experts. You and me and our opinion doesn't matter there. What matters is what does the law say, what does the official plan say, and what does Ontario need in order to keep growing?
I guess what I'm asking you is as me being in Oakville, I was born and raised here, grew up in South Oakville, rode my bike around that area before Cornwall was there, right? There was nothing north of Upper Middle, right? And so, we had this vision growing up, and I'm sure as long as you've been here as well, it's just, I appreciate that there's powers that be above that are kind of pushing down. But I just was curious, how do you feel? Is that something, I know we want growth, but do you see that as what you think Livable Oakville is?
Yes, I don't see anything unlivable about it.
Okay.
Look, I went to university in Manhattan. I've seen a building over 10 stories before. I've lived in one. I actually live in one now that's more than 10. It's
Right.
only 11, but, when I was at Columbia University, I lived on top of a very tall building at Broadway and Cathedral Parkway. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You could see forever, and you had quite a nice view. It's not the size of the buildings that determines the livability. It's, have you kept up with the growth? Do you have the facilities that people need?
Yeah.
And that's the great struggle. And that's the thing that I got involved in politics in the first place to fix. And that's what's kept me in politics, is there seems to be a lot of growth that we have to keep keeping up with.
Right.
One of my mottos is, don't look back. That's not where you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob, I'd like to say one more thing about this Midtown and all the other growth nodes that we're going to be dealing with over the next 30 to 50 years. When I'm thinking about your question about I was able to save Glen Abbey. I was able to stop power plants, like by my count, 5 of them.
Yep.
People are really only aware of maybe one of them. But I've been able to defend the town very successfully on many crises moments. And the difference between them and this is a law. The legislature passed it, and they're the boss.
Right.
And if we want to change the law, we've either got to persuade a majority of the legislature, or we've got to elect a majority of the legislature. And when you're the mayor or a member of council and you're passing bylaws that you expect people to obey, don't you have to set an example by obeying the laws that tell you what you're supposed to do?
Fair enough. Yep.
That's the ethics of the situation.
Yep.
And more than that, the province has the powers and the tools to make you do what you don't want to do if you don't want to do it. For example, in the Municipal Act, if a council disobeys the province, they have the power, and they have exercised that power in other places many times in history. They have the power to fire the council and send in an administrator to run the place.
Really?
Really. Like, there's 2 levels of government in this country. There's the national level and the provincial level.
Yeah.
They're the only 2 government levels in the Constitution. The Constitution mentions municipalities this way. Municipalities are the creatures of the provinces.
Right.
That's who
Creatures.
we are.
Yeah.
So, it's good to know who you are when you're going to fight with people. When we were fighting the power plant, there was no law involved. In fact, what we showed was the government was breaking its own law. When we were fighting to save Glen Abbey, there was no law requiring us to develop, to permit Glen Abbey to be developed. In fact, there were laws that permitted us to save it.
Right.
And so we used the law. Now, using the law to defend the town successfully many times, and now I'm in a situation where I'm being asked, well, what we really want to do is we don't want to follow that law. I'm like, well, have you thought about the consequences? And people didn't want to think about the consequences, but the consequences are in. A couple of months ago, the province gave us a quote-unquote letter of governance, which is a fancy way of saying, thanks for coming out. We'll take Midtown from here.
I mean, in regards to kind of the meetings and the people that have kind of.
So what the province has done is they've given us a letter, and this is what it says. We're going to do transit-oriented community development all over Oakville. It covers, their letter of governance covers all of Oakville. And it says, and our first one is going to be the 12 and a half acres just north of the GO station, where the 4 district applications are.
Yep.
And we are out of the picture. We have no say. None. All we get to do is comment. And we get to say, they're going to publish sometime this month, or maybe next month. When they blew into town, what they said was that by now they would have a published published plan for what they want to happen there, and it hasn't shown up yet.
Yep.
And so there's on the face of it, I think we're entitled to conjecture that they've run into a problem or two, or they would have already published it. When they do publish it, there's going to be a brief opportunity for council and for the public to come forward and say what they think of it. And then the province will say, thanks for coming out. Here's our decision.
Yeah.
Now, they've done this half a dozen times, roughly, across the city of Toronto. And the city of Toronto, as I understand it, resisted them the first couple of times. And then they discovered who the boss really is. And, and now they're cooperating or collaborating, I think.
So essentially we're in that stage now where, despite the, goodwill and good faith of people who wanted to step up and kind of voice their opinions and you obliged, and we lessen the height of the stories. None of that matters now. It's just the province just says, thank you, but we're doing what we're going to do. And there's nothing you can do about it. Is that really where we're at with it?
Midtown's 103 hectares.
Yep.
We're going to have to go back and forth between metric and imperial here, which I hate.
Square kilometer?
So there's 103 hectares in Midtown. The district applications, which is what the province has taken control of, is 5 hectares. It's a little bit less than 5%. And that leaves 98 hectares that still need to, we've got, there's at least a dozen tower applications in-house already for other parts of the Midtown area that we haven't even begun to talk about yet. And they're subject to the existing OP, which has no limits.
Okay.
So would you like limits? I would.
Yep.
That means we got to pass limits we can defend. So far, the public hasn't been comfortable with the level of building heights not leaving the 40s, 40 floors. People have been talking about, oh, we want 8, oh, we want 10, oh, we want 20, these kinds of numbers, and they're not going to be supportable. They're not going to withstand appeals at the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Kind of the medium number of that. Is there any other thought behind just the?
Well, the province has come in and said, well, let's see. District's application has several towers of 65 floors, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
We're waiting to see what the province is going to say is reasonable. There's other places in Ontario where the province has cheerfully told people to do more.
Yeah.
We're waiting to see if they're listening to the public here.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that it appears, based on what our staff and our consultants have done to date, that the minimum defensible profile for Midtown is maximum heights in the 40s, and not every building at the same height. Please, all of our work has been to have a range. You go from 10 to 43 or 10 to 45 or whatever, but you have a range so that you have an interesting skyline.
Right.
But we got to get used to the idea that we're going to have more of a skyline. P.S. We've already got a skyline. We've been building towers, and not particularly near transit, since 1980 or maybe earlier. If you go downtown to Oakville and you stand down there on Navy Street and you look up, I think you can see 12-story buildings right there in our holy downtown. And you look across the river and there's several.
Rental apartments, yep.
Yeah. And if you go over to Brony, how high are the Ennis Clare buildings? 20, 22, 24?
Yep.
That's 44 years ago?
Yeah. I guess it's just the density of it all being in one spot, which is already one of the busiest spots in Oakville, right? In terms of traffic and flow. It's just, I think people, I personally find how on earth, I drive to work down there every day down Trafalgar, pick my kids up from school. And so I'm trying to figure out how that could even make any sense with that much population coming with those towers.
Well, part of the plan that we published includes a couple $100 million in transportation improvements, new roads, new bridges. All of that's understood.
Sure.
All of that's been addressed. I can tell you that never has the Ontario Municipal Board blocked a development on the grounds that it's inconvenient for a resident.
That's for sure.
Or, I don't want any more people here.
Yeah.
That has never worked. We need a different reason. Our reasons are professional reasons by qualified experts around variety of skyline, around necessary sunlight, around circulation of people, around how much pedestrian space there should be, those kinds of things. But none of those things are, I don't want it.
Right. All right, Mayor Burton, let's change gears here. So imagine the federal and provincial government gave you a blank check to make whatever change or implement something in Oakville. What would you do?
Well, a blank check.
Blank check.
Gee, I was born to think big. We need to dramatically improve our transportation facilities. We've got a north-south issue around the QEW. We could use a lot more bridges. We've got, I think, a perfectly sized town to start having a bus rapid transit and a light rail transit. I don't believe that we've got enough sports facilities, indoor and outdoor, yet. I could spend it.
Yeah.
Blank as it is, I could
Yeah.
spend it.
But transit would be kind of your number one.
Well, and don't forget my cultural facilities.
Yeah.
So no, I would. What we've always had here is the cleanest, greenest, safest town, and it's just a really comfortable place to live. And what I think livability is keeping that going, and welcoming people from all over the world. There's a huge economic advantage to us. You know, a city that isn't growing is busy. You know, Bob Dylan said, "If you're not busy being born, you're busy dying."
Yeah.
And a
Busy
good,
living, busy dying, right?
a
Yeah.
good city is always busy being born and growing. And you know, you can look around the world. There's all kinds of places that are considered highly livable. Let me just name one. There's very few places in North America where real estate costs more and where the residents are wealthier than the center of the Upper East Side of Manhattan, you know, off to the east of Central Park.
Right.
64,000 people live in the densest square kilometer there. And I don't really believe we'll get more than 64,000 ever, you know, 100 years from now there.
Yeah.
And the place is required to have at least 20,000, and it's supposed to grow from there.
Okay.
So, you know, we could do worse than to have another Upper East Side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a meeting tonight. The Brony Residents Associations are meeting, right? Because of the new proposal at the Brony Go now, right? There's four buildings proposed to go up on the Brony Go.
Really?
Oh. Yeah. I think, well, they're meeting about something.
All right. Well, the development of the Brony Go area is not going to happen anytime soon, and that's because there's a big difference between the two places.
Yeah.
What you have in the Oakville GO station area is a largely empty industrial wasteland. And, you know, the old Faro plant
Yep.
with its contaminated land, all the old GE plant, you know, just empty, tumbleweeds. And over in Brony, you've got a thriving business district
Yep.
with lots of warehouses and manufacturing going on. And so it takes longer to develop an existing area. It will redevelop, but it won't redevelop at anything like the speed that a brownfield would.
Sure.
You know, people say it's not Oakville's tradition to have these buildings, and I point to 1980 when people were building buildings, and a lot of Oakville people live in them. But you know, is our tradition to have an abandoned industrial wasteland around our GO station? I don't think is that the look we're looking for?
Right.
Because that's the look we got.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mayor Burton, this brings us to the one of the favorite parts of the show here. This is the Robcast Rapid Ask. So I don't think you've been prepped on these, so I'm going to hit you with some questions. You just want your honest answers here. So you're on death row. It's your last meal. What are you looking on the plate there for yourself?
I'd like a peanut butter sandwich.
Simple. Okay, fair enough. You've had a great day. You're taking your 107 steps back from the town hall to your apartment building there. You've got your iPod buds in. What music are you listening to?
I love Delbert McClinton.
Albert McClinton. That's the first one that's been announced on this show for the first one. Last question. If you had the opportunity to meet with anyone right now, or dead or alive, who would that person be you could take out for dinner and kind of pick their brain?
Well, a man named George Chisholm moved over here from Burlington 200 years ago and founded Oakville. The folks back in Burlington like to think we're a colony of theirs.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to George and say, what were you thinking?
I was going to ask you, what would you ask him? And that would be what you ask him? Well, Mayor Burton, I appreciate you taking the time today. And stay tuned for another episode of the Robcast.
Good being with you.
The Robcast is brought to you by Oakville's own Fisher Private Wealth Management of RBC Dominion Securities and Fraser Associates of RBC Private Banking.